Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's meeting of the South Planning Committee. Item 1, apologies for absence and appointment of substitute members. Do we have any?
Thank you, Chair. There are no apologies. We have a full house tonight.
Oh, good. Thank you all for coming. Item 2, declarations of interest. Do we have any? No? Thank you very much. Item 3, the minutes. Do we confirm the minutes of the meeting of the committee held on the 9th of January? Are we agreed? Thank you. Item 5, proposed pre-committee site visits. Are there any items?
Yes, Chair. We have an item and a request from Councillor Eastwood relating to land north of Norton Road, Eden. It's due to go to the March committee, and the request for the site visit has been asked. The proposal is a reserve matters application pursuant to an outline permission for a detached self-build stroke custom build dwelling. The request for the site visit is so that members can visit the site to see the scale and appearance of the proposed dwelling in the context of the street scene and the existing properties around the area.
Thank you very much. Okay, our chairman's announcements. Members, and it's the usual announcements. Members of the public are permitted to film, broadcast and report on the meeting, subject to the efficient running of the meeting not being affected. Only those people who have registered in line with the committee's speaking procedure may address the committee. Members of the public are requested not to call out during the committee's discussions on any item. All speakers will have 3 minutes in which to make their statement and are asked to remain seated after they've addressed the committee to answer any questions the committee may have. This meeting is being webcast on the Council's corporate YouTube channel. Therefore, could all of you speaking please utilise their microphones when doing so. There are no planned fire drills, so if the alarm does sound, evacuation instructions will be given by Democratic Services. Please ensure that any devices are switched off or onto silent mode. For the benefit of the public watching remotely, I will now introduce the top table. And furthest on my right is Catherine Hall, who's Head of Legal Services. Next to me is Democratic Services Officer Richard Wood. I'm the Chairman of the committee. On my left, we have Simon Ellis, the Head of Development Management, and Nathan Loud, the Development Management Team Leader, who's presenting item 7 on our agenda. And beyond him, we have the planning officers. For item 6, it's Shamal London. For item 8, it's James Luntz. And item 9 is Sunny Baines. So without further ado, I shall take item 9 first. That's in Gold Street, Northampton. Thank you very much. So is Sunny here? Thank you, Sunny. Yeah. Yes, we've decided to change the order to take Gold Street first. Councillor Sharps.
For what reason is the change?
Thank you, Chair. It's due to the number of speakers registered on that item. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. This application is seeking full plan permission for the part demolition and erection of 2 additional floors to create 13 flats. The site is situated within Northampton Town Centre and has the known address of 51 Gold Street. Currently, a 2-storey commercial building is located on the site, which has been vacant for 4 years and was used as a sports bar known as Class E in terms of planning perspectives. A similar planning application was presented at the South Planning Committee on the 3rd of August 2023, where members refused the application for 2 reasons. The first reason being the negative impact of the mansard roof on the All Saints Conservation Area. And the second reason being the noise impact from the surrounding businesses, in particular to the 2 nightclubs to the west of the site, affecting the proposed development and subsequently impacting the operation of the businesses as well as the residential amenity of future occupants. This proposed scheme addresses those matters by altering the roof form so it would no longer introduce a mansard roof and instead mimics the flat roof that is currently experienced on Gold Street, and has demonstrated in principle that the noise impact can be suitably mitigated so that the proposed scheme would not affect the surrounding businesses and could provide adequate amenity standards for future occupiers. The Conservation Officer and Environmental Health Officer are satisfied with the proposed scheme and hence no objection. They have expressed no objection subject to conditions which can be imposed should the development be granted. This photo montage is to give members some perspective on the change to the roof form. The montage depicts the mansard roof that was refused as part of the previous scheme. Whereas this montage depicts the current proposed scheme with a flat roof, as that can be seen presently from Gold Street. Officers consider that the reasons for refusal have been addressed and the proposed scheme is acceptable from a planning perspective. And as such, it is recommended that planning permission is granted subject to conditions and payment of SAMs. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And for this item, we have some objectors to speak to us. First of all, I'll take Pat Dooley and Simon Thompson together, and you will have 3 minutes between you. Yes. Not 3 minutes each? No. All right. Please press the button in the centre of the microphone console and speak when you're ready.
Good evening, councillors.
Could you speak closer to the microphone, please?
Good evening, councillors. My name is Pat Dooley. I'm speaking against this application, acting on behalf of Mr. Thompson, who owns Asylum nightclub, which is directly adjacent to this building. The application was refused by your committee in August 23. The new application has been submitted with a further noise report that is dated the 5th of November 2023. However, when you read this report, it was carried out on, the noise assessment was carried out on a Friday evening, which they suggest is the busiest night with the nightclubs, which is not the case, as Mr. Thompson will explain. And the actual report, the noise levels taken were actually lower than the noise levels that were taken in November 2022. So they have reverted to using the data from the 2022, November 2022 survey. And that is the one that you actually refused. That was the application which was taken when one of the nightclubs was closed, and therefore this report, all of this mitigation measures, etc., has been done on the exact same basis as what you refused. This was picked up by the environmental officer, who advised the clubs be contacted by the applicant so they could make sure that both nightclubs were working and operating at the same time to give a fair result. This was discounted and ignored by the applicant, and no survey was carried out when both clubs were operating.
You have a
Do you want
minute
to
and a
carry
half left.
Go on, carry on.
So we've been running 24 years in the town. We're jointly at the moment partners with the Northampton University, and we run the official student nights for the Northampton University. if this application goes through, our venue will be closed down. There's no way you can mitigate against sub-base, which it doesn't come into consideration when you're doing a noise report. It doesn't account for that. And yeah, so obviously there's only 3 nightclubs left in the town centre. All 3 of those are built around this flat of blocks. There's myself, Escape, and on the other side there's 43, another nightclub. And yeah, if it gone.
Yeah, the only changes they've made to the scheme to mitigate what you asked them to do last time in liaison with the nightclub owners is that they've moved 3 of the bedrooms in the rear flats that look over towards Escape nightclub. Nothing else has changed. So the mitigating measures are not actually, they're computer generated, so they might work as the environmental officer puts in his report. There is the issue, of course, of the approach to this entrance to the flats. It is via a dark alleyway, which is fronts the church or the old school building. And therefore the safety of the residents going up and down.
Thank
this
you very
dark
much.
alleyway.
I must stop you there. Your time is up. But if you'd remain in your seats in case of questions from members. Councillor Clubley.
Yes, just a couple of quick questions to refresh my memory. First of all, can you tell me your opening hours? And secondly, just refresh my memory as to how far away your nightclub is.
So we're adjoined with the wall, so we're right next door to it completely. We trade, at the moment we trade 3 days a week, which is Wednesday for our student night, Friday and Saturdays. We do occasional parties midweek. Our licence is from 10 o'clock in the morning all the way through to 5 o'clock in the early hours of the morning.
Any further questions? Councillor Barter.
Thank you. Yeah, just to get this clear in my mind, the issue, if I remember rightly, is not noise from the development affecting you. It's your noise affecting the development so that they, you think, will complain and get you shut down.
100%.
Yeah, agent of change, basically.
Yeah. Okay, just so I understand.
Councillor Barrett.
Yeah, just a quick question on the noise aspect. So each 3 nights, is it the same type of music or is it different decibel type music?
Yeah, depending on what's on. And so, for example, a real popular thing for us at the moment is daytime parties because of it's become really popular for more over 30s and 40s because they can obviously go out early in the evening and come home at 10 o'clock at night. So there's different styles. We do a drum and bass night, which is very bass heavy. We do a house night. We do an old school classics night. We do a 70s night. And the day parties are a big thing throughout the day. And then in the evening, we're multi-genre in the main room and we're house music in the garden. So it's very bass driven. And that's the biggest concern of this application because, oh, sorry. So because no matter what you can do, you can't mitigate against the sub base because it just travels through buildings. And where we've only got, you know, even if it's a 4-foot wall or a 2-foot wall and you're right next to it, it's just, you know, we've got complaints. We had complaints from a flat that was 300 metres away from our venue and the council mitigated against that with us. We had a noise assessment done and everything else, and we had our decibels done and all that. And we have to keep to them things, and that's 300 metres away. So you can imagine when we're actually butted right up to that wall, it is going to be impossible to do. So it will shut us down.
Yeah, this committee has seen, and colleagues will know, our commitment to maintaining historic businesses in this town, and we've commented on such like applications before. Can we go back to the picture, please, of the front? I'm interested to know your complaint rate. Firstly, you've just touched on it a little bit there. So what is your complaint rate since you said 24 years? And then, yeah, so we've got 300 metres. Is that going towards Seoul Central? Is that coming back up to?
So do you know the big, I don't know if you know Northampton, but Bridge Street, just behind Bridge Street, there's a block of flats that was built, and that was built within our lifetime of the club. And one of the flats there was facing, so it's right over the back of all that.
Okay.
And then the other complaint, believe it or not, is if you look straight down that street towards the train station, so it's going away from us, there's a block of flats right over the back behind the new black line that's all being done up. I don't know if you know the new black line, where the black block of flats there, we have one person from in there. So, and that's actually behind another set of buildings that's, as you're in Horseshoe Street where we are, there's another set of buildings there and their flats there. And we had a noise complaint from that we mitted against. So that, I know it's not a lot of noise complaints in 25 years, but you can see how, you know, we have got neighbouring properties that are all lived in, unfortunately, around all the last 3 nightclubs in the town.
So just for clarity, for the committee to hear, so you've had 2 complaints over the last 24 years, and one of them's been as far away as from 300 metres. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps it can be something which our legal advisor can actually answer. With regards to the participants and the purchasers of these apartments, can anything be put into their contract to say that they accept the situation with regards to the amount of noise that is coming from the adjacent clubs, so that they can be aware of, you know, anybody that purchases this can be aware of that situation, so therefore they can't complain against it.
Yeah, go on, yeah.
That's all fair enough being put in there, but surely in a situation so sensitive to the town and the aspects of the university's main night time pool for, 30,000 people that come into our town that we're relying on coming to Northampton for the university, shouldn't that be mitigated before you give a decision on this? Because that could then get overlooked later on.
I was just thinking that anybody that purchases this, buyer beware, if I can put it that way.
Well,
So,
the buyer, all it needs is a complaint to be made by the buyer beware, whether they have accepted that or not. They could look at it and put through a complaint in, and then once the complaints go through to the club, then that's when the business is a threat and could lose. Yeah.
The minute someone lives in that flat and they open that window,
Yeah.
you're legally bound to 56 decibels to their windows. So if that window's, just round the
Yeah.
corner where they've put it now, which is say where that table is, they open that window, 56 decibels is probably it's probably as loud as I'm speaking now.
Yeah.
Ms. Hall?
Thank you, Chair. Just on that point, it really comes down to an issue of control in terms of this will be, as I understand it, this development is being sold to potentially private owners, and in which case it's going to be, you could potentially put something in their contract, but it would be difficult to A, get it agreed, and B, to enforce and monitor it because it's private owners at the end of the day. If we had, for example, other alternative accommodation being proposed, there might be better control measurements in place to kind of say this is the basis on which you're occupying these premises. So I think it might be difficult to do that. It's also not something that's being put forward before members this evening for consideration as well. Ultimately, even if you pop something into a legal agreement to say you won't complain because you understand the environment in which you're moving into. If business changes, business frequency changes, or if somebody is just particularly prone to or sensitive to particular noises or anything on those lines, there is nothing that we can do to stop somebody actually putting a complaint in. It would then be down to the environmental health team to monitor that and see whether it's a justified issue and whether or not something has changed that might need consideration. So it's not a simple mechanism to put something into a transfer or a purchase contract, unfortunately.
But can I just say that if you are starting to think like that, you already started off in a very threatening way to his business, because you're already sort of suggesting that it's going to be noisy before you've even started this application. By, with that suggestion of saying it could be noisy. Well, it shouldn't be noisy. It should be acceptable. Full stop, really, before it's approved.
I was just looking at perhaps a happy medium where,
The happy medium will put his business at risk.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
But thank you,
Councillor Barrett.
Yeah, thank you. Colleagues will know around here the precedent, very similar issue we discussed not long ago, actually set a precedent for that in terms of noise mitigation. I don't know whether I can ask Simon now in terms of the mitigation aspects of windows, opening width, et cetera, if we're going into that detail. I think you know where I'm going with this. My concern, and again, I'm very clear with this, we have to protect mechanisms that make Northampton what it is and businesses that contribute to the nighttime economy, provide jobs, provide, as you say, you're linked to university. So we've got...
Is there a question to the applicants?
Yeah, well, it's not really to the applicant, but I think
Well,
it's
can we wait
important
until we
that
go back to?
we
the
know
auditors
the
after
precedent
this?
that we've set. Okay.
Any further questions for the objectors? No? Thank you very much. Okay. And we now have Patrick Francis and Dan Kituno, who will speak to us as objectors. And it's the same arrangement as per the previous speakers, that you have 3 minutes between you both.
Can I use the 6 minutes?
No, it's not a total of 6 minutes. It's a total of 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, Chancellors. Good afternoon, your Chair. My name is Dan Kituno, the co-owners of Escape Venue, the building listed on the left from the building that the developers have presented today. I've got 3 points to make here. The first one is to just add on the my previous guys that have just spoken about the noise assessment, the noise impact report that has been presented in the report today was carried out without involving us. Yet, when we were here in the last committee hearing, there was an agreement that when they do this again, they're gonna contact us, and then we will tell them when is our noisiest time so that we can collect the right evidence to support their application, but they didn't follow that through. So we have not been involved with this assessment at all. The other one was they only carried this assessment on one night. Now, from our point of view, every night is different. Tonight, we might be doing drum and bass, which the noise levels will be different. Next week, we might be doing urban night, which the noise levels will be different. The other night, we'll be doing another genre, which is different. So just doing an assessment on one night will not give you the right evidence to call it as a conclusive report or evidence to actually base on to say, okay, this is the right decibels to base on to make a decision. My last point is the method used. Again, they use the weighted measurement method, which does not pick up bass, just like as Simon said. It doesn't pick, it just picks up the noise, but it doesn't pick up the bass noise, the bass vibrations. So that renders the whole process really useless, really, because it doesn't really give you the correct information you need to make a decision. That's it. And also the last thing I want to say.
You've only got 45 seconds left.
Yes, we are occupying a grade 2 listed building, so we haven't got any chances of making any alterations to make any mitigation. Our windows are quite slim. They are just single glazed, so we will not be able to do anything in case of any complaints to mitigate this this noise complaints. Thank you.
You have 19 seconds left. Mr. Francis.
That's all we have to say. That's all we have to say. Thank you.
Oh, right. Would you remain in your seats in case of questions from members? Are there any questions for our objectors? No? Thank you very much. Oh, Councillor Eastwood, there is a question.
I hope I haven't overstepped the line. when you planned this building, were you not aware of this alternative music centre before you planned it? Because you were doing a residence adjacent to a pulsating business, and yet there was obviously going to be a conflict on noise. Can you address that issue?
I don't know if
Councillor
I'm,
Eastwood, that's a
understand.
that's
We are
a
not the
question for the-
developers.
Hold on. That's a question for the applicants.
All right, fine.
Are there any questions for our objectors? No? Thank you very much. And now we have the agent for the applicants, Adrian Ringrose, to speak to us.
Is that on? Yeah.
Yeah, please
Okay.
start when you're ready.
Okay, yeah, I'm Adrian Ringrose. I'm from Stimson Walton Bond Architects, and we were the architects and the agents for the project. I was going to refer initially to the mansard roof, but I don't think that's necessarily the biggest issue. So I'm going to dive into the second reason for the refusal. So when it was submitted, it was deemed to have failed to sufficiently address National Planning Policy 187 by identifying that the proposed noise mitigation was appropriately designed to address all sorts of types of noise from the existing permitted businesses. This objection was mostly based on only one of the nightclubs being in the immediate vicinity being open when the original noise surveys were done. Since then, another acoustic survey was carried out when both nightclubs were open, and the subsequent report was issued based on the slightly amended internal design layout and window positions. It's not true that only one of the clubs was open when the second survey was done. The acoustic report also took into consideration comments from the local authority environmental health officer, who subsequently removed their objection, stating the enhanced mitigation scheme submitted is acceptable and will ensure the occupiers will be adequately protected against noise ingress from the surrounding commercial noise sources, providing robust conditions and construction detail provided in the any approval. Northampton Town Council also maintained their objection based on it not being the right type of development for the location based on noise and proximity to late night music venues. However, the local authority environmental health officer, as previously mentioned, considers the scheme as acceptable and adequately protects against noise ingress from surrounding commercial noise and sources, and as such, Town Council objection should be overruled and the planning should be approved with the appropriate conditions. Interestingly about the noise, the acoustic report says the most dominant noise is from the outside area, not from the inside area. The outside area, which doesn't have planning permission, I don't believe, and is near to a listed building, is dominant, more dominant than any noise coming from within inside the buildings. And the mitigation design takes into consideration that worst case scenario. And I'm also led to believe, and having read through the report, that a low frequency was included in the acoustic calculations in line with the recommendations from the local authority environmental health officer.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there any questions for the agent? Councillor Bambridge.
Yeah, could you explain what extra measures have been taken with this submission that weren't in the original submission to reduce or improve the soundproofing to the proposed flats?
What it actually demonstrated was the construction detailing of the original application was satisfactory. The only thing that was changed was the internal layout was amended, so some bedrooms were moved away from the party wall between the two buildings, and the windows were repositioned further away from that side. It's also interesting that somebody commented about openable windows. this building will have a whole house ventilation system. So the windows don't actually need to open, which is a common condition on many town centre planning applications where flats are built near busy roads with traffic fumes being a problem. So the windows actually don't need to be openable.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Bagot-Webb.
Thank you, Chair. What I thought I was hearing in the general discussion was it's the low frequency noise that is the problem. And the low frequency noise is often through vibration through the building, which obviously then echoes. What is your view with regarding the insulation between the two buildings for the transmission of the very low frequency?
What's going to happen is that the existing wall between the two buildings will remain where it is, and a completely isolated new wall will be built on the inside, so the two buildings don't actually touch, and that will also include the foundations as well. So there will be a physical separation between the two buildings, which was part of the requirement as recommended by the acoustic engineer.
So if I come back on that, so are you saying there is a difference between the original application and the new application with regards to that separation?
That the separation was always in the original application.
Thank you, Councillor Sharps.
We've heard about levels of decibels, and you're keen to point out that some of the original mitigation is still there. Can you tell me the decibel level by which you think you can mitigate sound within this property?
Without having the document in front of me, I couldn't, but the levels were set by the local authority environmental health officer, which were included in the acoustic report, and the report demonstrated that those could be achieved with the level of construction that was recommended in the original proposal and this proposal.
So if it is indeed correct that if a resident complains for 56 decibels, and I'll ask a planning officer to confirm that if that is correct, if you don't stick to that level, then we do have a problem that, you know, you don't know currently sitting in front of me, and I understand obviously you don't have all the paperwork with you, but if you're not sticking to that, then we've got multiple occupants all having that issue of not being within the right frame of decibel. So we're going to have residents complaining, and that's what we've heard tonight, that there is a fear, and it is a live fear, and I can understand it, and I can understand from your point of view, you're saying we've put in mitigating issues to control it, but I've got no proof in front of me currently that says that absolutely it will be. And I'm going to just point this out. I've got a very loud kettle at home, and my kettle boils at 95, I actually checked it, 95 decibels. So I was quite surprised when I heard it was sort of 56. So I'm just going to say that out there. Decibels are one of those weird things that, you know, they're very difficult to sort of just quantify. So I just would like to make sure that we know exactly how protective you are being. But I don't think it's as simple. I do not want to see a local business not in this area. And I've heard you refer to an area with no local planning. But that area's been there before your building.
Yes.
And I don't believe that you want to get rid of that or change it or anything else. I would like to see you working together with our planning officers to make sure that both of them coexist.
Okay, and I completely understand that. And I've read through the draft conditions that were going to be proposed if the application is approved, and that involves testing of the building before any occupation takes place to make sure it complies with the standards that have been set. So it's not, so that is actually a construction process as well, because that needs to be tested during the construction process, not just at the end when it fails and somebody's got a problem. It will be done throughout the process. And that in itself, as a condition, should be probably all encompassing because the buildings cannot be occupied. So there's a risk to the developer if the testing doesn't satisfy the ratings that have been set out and agreed by the acoustician and the environmental health officer.
Then I'll ask you one more question if you don't mind.
Yeah.
And that's again about vibration. Now, you've said that you're going to put some mitigation in place. Now, the gentleman before have explained, and music industry is not an easy one. Building industry is not an easy one. So one day you'll have a quiet day, one day you'll have, you know, the beat, might be both clubs doing it at the same time. You might have something on the market square, there might be a band going, you know. How we've seen your report, but it doesn't allow for everything. It can't allow for everything. So then when your building starts to suffer because it's having all of that noise from that area thrown at it, and somebody within that building complains, what happens next? Because it's those businesses that are the biggest and the loudest that will be affected. Those will be the ones that receive the complaint.
I think the important thing to point out is that I've read through the acoustic report again before I came, and it's clear that the outside area is the most dominant noise issue on the site and probably in the whole area. The noise that comes through the building from either nightclub doesn't compare to the outside noise. So the mitigating design prepared by me and the acoustician, namely being driven by the acoustician, satisfies that outside noise, which is alongside the wall. Anything from a further distance will not make it any worse than what that is. And if the mitigation design satisfies that, then it will satisfy it from something that's 100 yards away or 200 yards away.
And you do understand that from my point of view, I
Yeah,
have to sit
yeah,
here
yeah.
and I have to look at this because they bring 30,000 plus people into the town. And it is about looking after businesses, looking after residents, looking after what
Do
is.
you have a further question?
Yeah, I do. Thank you, Chair. Looking after what is there now and what could be there in the future and making sure that we build better. I hope you understand that. And then have you had the opportunity to sort of really talk to the businesses and really work together? Because we heard today that that's not really been the case.
Well, there was a suggestion in a document that was prepared by the environmental health officer originally, whereby the test should be carried out in conjunction with both owners. Now, that didn't sound quite right to me because there are two different agendas. One is to actually not have any houses there or dwellings there, and the other one is to actually try and find something that's going to cohabitate, if you like, next to each other. So it would make sense for the testing to be done on a typical night rather than a night where somebody knows they're coming and potentially crank up the music unreasonably to a level to give a false reading.
I just asked you if you'd work together. That wasn't the question I asked you.
Well, but yes, okay, but I
that's-
was reading that in conjunction with the other comments which was there was no corroboration between the owners and when the testing was going to be done.
I take it was not, so you haven't collaborated
No.
together.
No.
So thank you. That was.
Well, actually, sorry, I'll just go back. Actually, we did manage to contact Escape and tell them when it was going to be done, but we didn't manage to contact Elysium.
Okay, so I think it's interesting. I should point this out. If you've said that, you got to remember these businesses were there before, and I'm going to say that again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Randall.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just be wondering how you mitigate the vibration of the noise through the floor, because I work in a night shift in a local supermarket that shuts at 12. Now, if I ever work on a Saturday night and the nightclub is probably about 50 metres away, that vibrates all the way through the floor. You can feel it. So it's not through the walls, it's actually, you can feel it on your feet through the floor. So how do you mitigate that?
Well, all I can say is that the low frequency noise was part of the acoustic assessment and report that was done. And based on the original proposals, there was a separation between the two structures. If the sound passes through the ground to other structures, then I presume that the acoustician and the environmental health officer have taken that into consideration in order to recommend approval.
And just one other one. I know you said about the outside noise, but surely that's every time somebody goes in and out and opens the door?
Yes, potentially, but not necessarily the need to open windows.
Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you, Chair. You were saying that there is a secondary wall going to be built on one side. Presumably that will also happen on the other side.
The other side's open to a
also,
courtyard.
will the gap between those two walls be filled with, you know, sound absorbing or whatever it may be that goes inside those walls?
Most structure-borne sound occurs when two materials are in touch with each other. So if they're isolated, that certainly helps with the sound mitigation. If you fill it with something, then potentially sound can pass through that medium, bridging the two buildings.
So there will be false walls on both sides of the building?
No, only on one side.
Only on one side?
Yes. There wouldn't be any need to have another separating wall between the nightclub and the new proposal. There would just be a void, a bit like a cavity, really.
A void. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? No? Do officers have the information that Sue Sharps was looking for? And anything else that you wish to come back on in what you've heard so far? Thank you very much.
Yeah, obviously, you know, we're not acoustic experts, so we're only going off what's been submitted with the acoustic assessment, and obviously reliant on our environmental health colleagues as to undertaking an assessment of the acoustic report that has been submitted, and ultimately they've raised no concerns with regards to that, subject to two conditions. Just picking up on a few of them with regards to the proposed external facade treatment along the western boundary, which obviously connects to the nightclub. Now, the proposal seeks to incorporate 100mm cavity offset with the existing nightclub facade, together with 325mm brick. And then you'll have another 150mm cavity with 100mm high dense rock wall insulation within the void. So that's kind of like the offset with regards to the nightclub and the level of I guess noise and attenuation treatment with regards to that. With regards to vibrations and the sort of plasterboard that they're using, will have high performance vibration isolators incorporated with them to obviously help mitigate against any vibration. So with regards to internal decibels, obviously the report does look at bedrooms and what the internal decibels will be, but also looks at what the internal decibels will be when looking at low frequency noises. And in both circumstances, what they've calculated is that the internal sound levels for both low frequency sounds and obviously sound levels will be lower than the criteria of which they've assessed it against in terms of the national criteria.
Thank you. Is there anything else that officers wish to cover?
Yeah, I'll say, and also, so a part of the conditions that Environment and Health have suggested, there will be some testing, so prior to occupation. So members can be rest assured that they would have to submit these details as part of a conditions discharge. And as part of the discharging those conditions, Environment and Health would make sure that the amenity is acceptable and there isn't impacts from noise and vibration or in terms of agent of change.
Thank you. Are there any questions for officers now? Councillor Bambridge.
Yeah, question for Mr. Lau. The requirements for the noise levels, you mentioned in a bedroom. We understand the bedrooms are being moved away from the back of the building. Are there different requirements for living rooms then, for the noise levels?
Just looking at the report in front of me, obviously I'm only quickly glancing at the report right now. So the report looks at the proposed lower floor flat 6 bedroom. So when assessed against the criteria, which is the BS national criteria for which it assesses it against, the criteria states that at night time, the decibel is 45 decibels, and the calculated internal sound level, which these are calculated with the mitigation, comes out at 32 decibels. So it's lower than the criteria which it's been assessed against.
So moving the rooms round, it means that the people sitting in the living room at night will hear the noise, but they go into the next room to go to bed away from the thing. That will be a lower noise. Is that basically what you're saying? The requirement.
I think so. Yeah. When looking at the nighttime activity and nighttime noises, obviously you're typically in the bedroom in terms of the residential units. So it's assessed it against that.
And those limits, are they related to any hours, or is that 24 hours a day?
I don't think it's assessed against any particular hours now.
Okay. Thank you.
You may return to your seat. Mr. Ringhurst.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett, questions to officers?
Yeah, questions to Simon and Nathan. So we heard there's some listed aspects around that building. Is there any way we could ensure the soundproofing of the business in regards to what the potential developer could do and discuss, pay for, make sure that the soundproofing is effective? I'm just wondering, obviously, with the listed aspects, I don't know that. That's what I'm asking you. Is there any further things we could talk about here, or we could defer while that's done to bring it back? I don't know. That's just opening that.
I think, if I may, Chair, I think what you're thinking about is the equivalent situation for the College Street decision. I think we went through a big discussion around that, and I think we concluded that it wasn't really feasible to require the developer to fund noise mitigation for businesses outside the site, because we didn't have the mechanisms available to do that. But looking at this situation, the equivalent of what you did on College Street when you deferred it and then it came back, if you look on page 1112, you've got conditions 8 and 9. What you did was you deferred the decision requiring the applicant to satisfy conditions 8 and 9 before you granted planning permission. So you effectively doubled up. You required the environmental protection team to be satisfied that conditions 8 and 9, or the equivalent conditions in the College Street decision, were satisfied before you granted planning permission. So you weren't leaving anything to chance. Because if you look at that, or notwithstanding what we've just discussed and the fact that the environmental protection team are satisfied with, they think it's feasible that a suitable noise environment can be created through the implementation of those conditions. What you did, thinking about the agent of change issue, is you decided to just have that security that you were knowing that was feasible before you granted permission. So you deferred it on the basis of the equivalent conditions being satisfied before you granted permission. But what you didn't do on College Street was require the developer to fund noise mitigation off-site, because we went round the houses on that and we didn't think there was a mechanism for you to be able to do that.
Councillor Randall.
Yeah, thank you. I know you said about decibels of 56, but on average, I think decibels of an inside, on Google, I've just Googled, the volume of a typical indoor concert is somewhere between 90 and 120 decibels. So if there's only going to be sound deadening on one wall, what happens to the other 3 walls?
Officers?
Sorry, did I say 56? I meant 36, sorry.
What's the answer to the question there?
And I did also Google what was the average noise of a kettle, and that did say it's between up to 79 decibels for a kettle. So does that mean that you're going to have, you know, a nightclub where you're just going to go in there and just talk and not be able to play any music?
Mr. Ellis.
This assessment's about noise inside the bedrooms, not what the decibel level is from noise outside. And it's suggesting that given the noise assessment of the local area, that within the bedrooms, those are the noise levels you're going to get. Was it 36? Was it?
Yes.
So that's what
Yeah,
it's saying.
I understand that, but if we as councillors would have all received, I'm sure at some point, neighbour disputes where noise is thumping through the wall, and that could be somebody just playing their radio, and then that is deemed even louder than that amount in a next door property. That's just somebody's radio that's played loud, let alone music from a nightclub.
Well,
Yeah, but I guess the difference with this scheme is that we have quite a lot of acoustic treatments within the walls, within the ceilings, to obviously mitigate against that. So when you're using the analogy of a thumping radio in the house next door, that hasn't got all the necessary acoustic treatments with this proposed development would have to mitigate against that.
Yeah, but I thought they said the one adjoining wall. That's why I said, what about the other 3 walls?
Yeah, so that when I was listing the mitigation along the western boundary, that was specifically the boundary that was against the nightclub. With regards to the kind of like the wall layers and insulation of the other walls, there are obviously just having a look now. So you've obviously got the brick skin. You then have cavity insulation. You then have soundproofing plasterboard. So there is still that element of acoustic treatment with regards to the other facades and elevations against the proposed buildings, but along the western boundary, which is against the nightclub, there's obviously an enhanced acoustic treatment.
Councillor Bagot-Webb.
Thank you, Chair. Can we come from this from a different direction? We're talking about testing before occupation. Are we saying that when we do the measurements within the bedrooms, even with the noise at full level that you'd expect in the nightclub, that we would be testing to no more than 36 dB within the rooms? Is that what the test is all about? And secondly, the vibration side will be testing to a certain level of vibration. What does the testing actually cover?
Mr. Loud?
Well, the testing would be to ensure that the mitigation measures that they put in would achieve an adequate amenity and that it wouldn't affect other businesses. As you can appreciate, environment and health aren't going to approve something where then later on they would have to come back to shut down a business. If we're going back to the same statutory consultees that have the power to enforce the powers should there be a nuisance. But in this case, we'll be doing that. We'll be front loading that to ensure that the mitigation measures that are put in with this development would meet adequate amenity space. So then there wouldn't be an impact from the agent of change. So businesses then wouldn't be impacted in that regard.
I'll come back on that. I mean, That was a very good technical answer, but not specifically to the question I asked. The question I asked was, when you come back to measure, is there a certain level by number that, say 36, that we would not accept anything greater than 36 when the normal level was being played in a nightclub? Very simple. 36, yes or no?
Yes, the condition specifically says that they will have to meet the noise levels which are specified within the report that they've submitted. The condition also says that this should be provided, and obviously that the measures are undertaken prior to occupation, and thereafter it shall be maintained and retained, so any of the owners can't then go around and start tampering with any of the acoustic treatments, because the condition says that they shall be retained thereafter.
So to me, that sounds watertight, that if it's above 36 or whatever that number is, you won't issue a certificate of occupation. Or am I missing a point?
Councillor Sharps, was it a question to officers?
Yes. So fundamentally, even though mitigations are being made, once the building is occupied, complaint to the business, i.e. the clubs, can result in a noise abatement notice. Am I correct? Yeah. All right. Fundamentally, this will then threaten the businesses in the area. Am I correct?
Yeah,
Yes.
there is no,
Yes.
you can't rule out that possibility.
Yeah. Okay. Such a notice could then threaten the viability of those businesses, because they then could have to put their own mitigations in, yet they are, in fact, first in. Now, that is exactly why, and it has been mentioned before, why we have oh, sorry, I've lost it. The agent of change. I believe the agent of change is here to protect the clubs in this particular planning application. And so therefore, I think that what we've seen today, although it is better, I don't think that it does its job yet.
Can I come back on that, please?
Yes.
So Environment and Health will be aware of the agent of change. If they weren't satisfied that there were no mitigations that could be provided, they wouldn't have, they would have objected against this development. There's conditions that we can impose and mitigation and possible mitigations that can be implemented, and Environment and Health are satisfied in that regard. So in terms of the agent of change, that has been scrutinised. Environment and Health have looked into it, and they are satisfied that there are mitigations that can be implemented, so other businesses aren't affected to that degree. And bearing in mind, Environment and Health are also the team who, like you're saying, can have powers to put measures in place if they need to, but they wouldn't do so because a condition that they've suggested, we would have to, they would have to submit, the agent applicant would have to submit the details for that to ensure prior to occupation that there is satisfactory amenity and that businesses around would not be affected with the introduction of this development.
Councillor Sharps, is it another question?
It's coming back off my original question. So people are strange, we know. Everybody has their little foibles. I don't believe that we can mitigate for people completely. And so, although I've seen the work of environmental health within this, I believe that they have said to a certain extent what they could do, but I don't believe it's enough. I don't believe it's enough in this. There's enough out there that means that if this building is in place and a person moves in, because it is from the point of view that once somebody takes residency, then that is the point by which that the clubs in the area are at risk. And if you can say I'm wrong, then I'd like you to say so.
So in terms of Environment and Health exercising their powers, it has to be a nuisance. It's not just a one-off or it's happening on a number of occasions. It has to be a legitimate nuisance from their perspective. and the purpose of us imposing these conditions is to mitigate against that harm. And the conditions clearly say that no occupation will take place until that nuisance has been addressed. If it hasn't, officers, when they get the discharge conditions, wouldn't discharge those conditions if they can't meet the mitigation measures that are adequate.
Councillor Bambridge.
Yeah, am I correct in saying that the measurements in dBA, I believe they are, the measurement, the sound measurements in decibels, it's in dBA. Okay. I spent most of my life in the truck industry and the tire industry, and I was quite heavily involved in noise suppression when Austria introduced Lärmschutz, which was the first country to do it, and since then the EU have got this, and the noise testing was done very high degree. dBA is a different frequency to dBD. dBA is the higher frequency. The very deep notes don't get measured under the dBA one, and with big heavy trucks vibrations, and you get that deep booming noise more than any other vehicle. And that's the one that causes the vibration that Councillor Randall mentioned. And anyone who lives on a road gets a car going past, and it's the hi-fi that being played inside it that's noisier than the tyres or the exhausts. So you've got a level of measurement that doesn't cover the noises that make the vibrations. So you've got a situation whereby you probably got the noise actually heard under dBA is fine, but you've still got that underlying booming noise that is quite often more annoying than the actual higher notes. So it's something we can discuss, but we can't really come to a conclusion on it because it's not covered under the legislation.
So is there a question for the officers?
Yeah, it's basically, the question was dBA because it excludes dBA measurements.
It's dB.
Mr. Laird.
What?
It's dB.
dB is for decibel, but there's a letter A or B or C or D after it, which is the measurement, the scale of measurement that the thing should be a little D, a big B, and a little A after it.
No, it's just dB.
That will be dBA then. That's the one that's commonly used.
Chair, if we may, Chair, we'd just like to go back on Councillor Sharp's last question. We could just clarify the officer advice around does it completely rule? Our position is that compliance with these conditions would dramatically rule out the possibility of noise abatement notices being served on surrounding businesses, but can't reduce it can't rule it out completely. Because all it can do is, if there were a nuisance complaint made, the best practicable defence has been put in place through these mitigation measures, but the nuisance legislation is outside planning legislation, so it can't fully remove that possibility. But in compliance with these conditions, it would reduce that likelihood quite considerably. That would be the position of the Environmental Protection Team. They've got two hats. They advise on planning and they also undertake investigations under the Environmental Protection Act. So that's our professional position.
Ms. Hall?
Thank you, Chair. Just to build slightly on those comments, in terms of the enforcement process, if a complaint is made, an assessment will be undertaken, and that will take different forms from just coming and listening by an environmental health officer. The alternative is that someone's keeping a diary, or to add to that, a diary is then kept and maintained so that they can understand the frequency of the issues and also the level of those issues as well. So that would be your first sort of port of call for an investigation or an inquiry. It's then a matter of whether or not, discussions can then bring forward alternative arrangements and adjustments with whichever property that might assist all involved, or whether then we do actually need to go as far as an abatement notice. So there's a lot of steps involved before an abatement notice would be issued in normal circumstances. So just bear that in mind when we're thinking of the wider process.
Councillor Barrett, are you going to move us forward into the debate now?
No. Quick question for Simon. Just yes, no. Can any of these conditions be done before? So if, for example, a deferral, if I mentioned deferral, could any of these conditions be done before to come back? That makes sense. Yes or no is fine.
Yeah, going back to what I said, 8 and 9, you could defer, require them to be complied with it in advance of planning permission, and then you could require an environmental health officer to come to a future meeting to answer these questions. Would be a
Brilliant, thank you.
suggested way
I just
forward.
wanted clarity for the committee to hear that.
Councillor Sharps, your question.
Yeah, and I'm happy with the last statement that was made by Simon. Thank you.
Councillor Clubley, do you still have a question? Right. Councillor Randall.
Yeah, thank
Is this a question?
Yeah, it is. So what I'm
Right.
saying is, because you're saying about noise mitigation, so you can guarantee with those windows closed that no noise above 36 decibels will penetrate through into that building.
Mr. Ellis.
Well, that's what the noise acoustic report says, and that's been validated by our environmental health officers. But I'm not going to professionally sit here and tell you, yes, I'm guaranteeing you that, because I'm not a qualified acoustician.
And just going back on that, we have just seen in Daventry, our local golf club has been resorted to losing all of its nighttime provision because of one property, and they've been operating for 30 odd years, and they now have lost all their nighttime economy, which was only weekends with family parties. So, you know, that has destroyed that.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett.
Yeah, just can I go into the debate now?
Yep.
Thanks. So my views of this quite clear, really. We've got a duty to uphold businesses in Northampton and to set them up not to fail, essentially. As we go to the conditions 8 and 9 on page 1112, thank you, Simon, for clarifying that. For me, it's prevalent that that happens. We then get the feedback from that, and then we come back here in however long that takes, and we discuss it next steps. Because from what I've heard, and we've got to be fully, like we were on the other one, when it came back, we have to be very content around this table and look business owners and users of that business in the face and say, we've done all we can to mitigate that. I think for me, and that's what I'm going to suggest, we defer for condition 8 and 9 to happen, and then it comes back with that environmental person here as well. That's what I'm suggesting.
Shall I take that as a proposal? Okay, does anyone wish to second that? Councillor Clubley?
Would second that proposal.
Right. Do you wish to speak, Councillor Sharps? Right, we've had a proposal from Councillor Barrett for a deferment. Could you restate your proposal, please?
Yeah, so the proposal is that we defer for a period of time so that condition 8 and 9 on page 1112 in the report can be completed. Feedback brought back in front of the committee, relevant officers here to answer any questions on that, and we consider it again in however long that takes to come back to us.
Any comments on that from officers? Okay, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour of that proposal, please show. We're unanimous. Thank you very much. The application is deferred. And we'll have a short break at this point, please. Yeah. Can you come back within 10 minutes, please? Yeah, at 20 past. Thank you. Woodbury Hall. Mr. London.
Evening all. This application relates to Witherbury Hall in Spa, which is located in Dean Shangar ward. This is an aerial view of the application site. To the north is an area of woodlands, and to the south is a golf course, which is within the ownership of the applicant. Beyond this is the open countryside. I say this to say that there aren't any residential properties located in close proximity to the application site. The scheme proposes a three-story extension. Sorry. The extension will be located along this eastern elevation, located where I'm currently pointing to. This is an outline application. With that, no proposed elevations nor floor plans were submitted, nor are they needed to be submitted. That will be dealt with at reserved matters stage. A recent application was approved in 2014 for 20 bedrooms. This application would result in an additional 20 bedrooms above that to 45 bedrooms, approximately 45 bedrooms. In regard to consultees, no objections were raised. There was support from economic development, and there were pre-commencement conditions recommended by the ecology and the lead local flood authority in regard for flooding, and for additional information to be submitted before pre-commencement conditions. These are some photos of the application site. So this is the side elevation where the extension is proposed, and this is the front elevation. And this is the rear elevation, and in this photo is basically just an access road, which basically separates the woodland from the application, the building, sorry. So basically, in summary, officers are satisfied that a scheme is capable of coming forward that would result in acceptable impact to the character and appearance and the residential amenity of the area. And as such, the principle of development is acceptable. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And our speaker is Mr. Sargent on behalf of the applicant. Mr. Sargent. You have 3 minutes. Please start when you're ready. And could you pull the microphone closer to you, please?
Is that okay? Good evening, everyone. The officer's comprehensive report recommends approval. I'm attending today to ask you to support that and to answer any questions that you may have. One of the council's major policies is to encourage tourism into the county. Over 400,000 guests come through the park's gates every year, which makes it second only to Silverstone, and brings into the district over £30 million of income each year. The park is the largest employer in South Northamptonshire after Mercedes F1 team, and has over 400 staff. Many local businesses rely on supporting the park with goods and services. The park is one of the largest ratepayers, contributing £1 million a year to the local coffers, and the WNC Economic and Strategic teams support the application. The time allocated only permits me to refer to a few paragraphs in the report. 3.1 confirms the consent was granted in 1990 for the park to be used for non-agricultural purposes. 4.4 lists 5 ecology policies that cover the whole district. They're not specific to the park. The report doesn't mention that the park was a barren landscape growing cereals in 1984 and was losing the ancient oaks at the average of 5 a year. It's now been turned into a unique site within the district. The remaining 280 oaks have been preserved and enhanced, 600 semi-mature oaks and 27,000 native trees have been planted. a dozen freshwater lakes constructed. The park is now home to one of the widest ranges of flora and fauna in the county. And in recognition of this has been made a corporate member of the Wildlife Trust. 410 refers to the emerging draft local plan. The WNC was absorbed into the SNC in 2020, and the park has since been asking it to work proactively with the park for the future. The park sent the WNC detailed representations in June 24 and pointed out there's no mention of the park or its importance to the district in the 800-page draft. The park is pleased to say that progress has been made on rectifying the submission. 5.1 confirms there's been no objections to the proposal. It's not controversial. It accords with policies, so should have been processed within 13 weeks. It is now 52 weeks since the application was submitted on the 14th of February last year, and this has delayed the park being able to plan for the future. 7.15 refers to a high-quality development. The park received an 82% rating from the AAA in its review last August, only 2% short of a 5-star rating. So there has been some question about updating policy EMP5, and there is a dispute over it that we've agreed to park pending further discussions between the parties. Thank you. If you have any
Thank you very
questions.
much. Are there any questions for Mr. Sargent? No? Thank you very much. Would you return to your seat, please?
Okay. Thank you.
Is there anything that officers wish to come back on in that?
Not particularly at this stage, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Randall?
Yeah, thank you. I think everything's been well thought out. There isn't any objections. Believe it sits well within the site, and I'd happily propose that we go with officers' advice and accept the application.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder?
Yeah, I'm happy to
Councillor
second that.
Barrett?
So yeah, I'm happy to second that. I think we've got to promote local businesses and that type of contributor to the local economy, and particularly South Northants. We need more of that, and we need to really positively promote that within the scope of our businesses. So happy to second that.
Thank you very much. Does anyone wish to speak before I take a vote? Councillor Pritchard.
As the ward member, I sincerely approve this particular application, particularly as it's an increase in bedrooms, and quite rightly. When you consider the amount of income that Whittlebury Park actually generates for WNC, I sincerely accept the recommendation with regards to approval.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else wish to speak? We have a proposal before us. It's been seconded. It's been supported by the local ward member. All those in favour, please show. All unanimous. Thank you very much. The application's approved. Item 7, Bridge Street, Northampton.
Thank you, Chair. This application relates to land at 21 to 23 Bridge Street, Northampton. The application site is located on the corner of Bridge Street and Angel Street. And as you can see here, where the star is the location of the site. The site is within the All Saints Conservation Area. As you can see from the map here, and again, the star represents the location of the application site. The building which once stood on the site was a Grade 2 listed building. The application before us seeks demolition of 21 to 23 Bridge Street to create 47 apartments with commercial units on the ground floor, together with bin and cycle storage provisions. The application is retrospective in nature as the building has been demolished. A separate listed building application has been submitted, and this will be considered under delegated powers. This is, as you can see, these are photos. The one on the left-hand side shows a recent photo of the site with the buildings which have been demolished. and the one on the right is taken in 2020. You can see with the building with quite a lot of scaffolding surrounding it. These are what the building once looked like. The one on the left is in 2009, and as you can see, the photo on the right is the building along Angel Square. In 2012, the site was consumed by fire and significant damage, significant damage was done to the upper floors of the building. Further fires in August 2023 and as recent as last July caused further excessive fire damage and smoke damage, leaving the building to be in a dilapidated condition and not suitable for retention. This photo here just shows the internal courtyard, just to give you an idea of the kind of like condition that the building was in prior to its demolition. A consent order issued by the courts last year upon the applicant required him to demolish the buildings and structures of 21 Bridge Street. A further structural report undertaken by the applicant confirmed that 23 Bridge Street was also structurally unsound for retention. The application was previously presented to committee in 2021 with a resolution to grant planning permission subject to completion of a Section 106 agreement. The previous scheme is similar in scale and appearance to that which is before members today, with the exception that the previous scheme was for part demolition in that it sought to retain the front facade facing Bridge Street. The key changes to this scheme before members today is that the front facade facing Bridge Street is to be rebuilt, the number of residential units is to be increased by 4, and no Section 106 contributions are being sought due to the scheme not being viable with the inclusion of these contributions. Just give you a quick run through of the proposed plans. This shows the ground floor plans. You can see where the cursor is. This is the commercial unit with access off Bridge Street. This, where my cursor is here, is the office accommodation along Angel Square. This is the main access leading into the residential units. And then you have cycle provision and bin stores for the residential units. And then where my cursor is now is the bin storage units for the commercial units. At ground floor level, they are proposing 8 residential apartments. On the first floor, there are 13 residential apartments. Second floor, we have 12 residential apartments. And then on the third floor, which will comprise of a mansard roof, we have 11 residential properties. This is the elevations of the proposed buildings facing onto Bridge Street. As you can see, the scheme does very much reflect the building that once stood on there, with the exception of the mansard roof. The other notable changes are that you haven't got this front entrance here anymore, which is replaced by a window, and the former access into the courtyard of the former building is now going to be the entrance into the commercial units. As you can see from the plan at the bottom, which shows the existing elevations, and the photo next to it, which shows what used to be the balloon bar and club, which is obviously now demolished. The proposed scheme now arguably seeks to create a bit more of an enhancement to the balloon bar and grill frontage that once was there, and is perhaps more in keeping with the buildings and the surrounding properties as well. This is a side elevation, so as you can see, the existing building along Angel Street was very much a mishmash of brick material as a result of various rebuilds throughout the lifetime of the building and also rendering of the property. What the proposal does is it seeks to continue the stucco facade at the ground floor from Bridge Street along Angel Square, And then it also seeks to propose some cladding above that. There are conditions obviously relating to materials. So what you see before you may not necessarily be the final appearance in terms of materials. For the reasons set out within the report, the proposal meets the tests within the NPPF when considering substantial harm to a heritage asset. The viability report submitted by the applicant has been independently reviewed and considered acceptable. The proposal is recommended for approval, subject to conditions and payment of a SAM contribution. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Barrett.
Yeah, thank you, Nathan. That was really in depth. I've got concern around sound again for local businesses again. Do you know the gap between the corner of that plot and MB's? Please.
I'll just get the plan up now. Bear with me. So which unit is it that you're referring to?
So you had a picture there. MB's is on the right, and then the plot is to the left of that.
Oh yes, yeah, I see it. Yes.
So what is the gap between that side elevation view and then NB's? Because their garden goes like literally runs alongside, doesn't it, and then goes to the right. So what is the gap there? Looks maybe 10 foot. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not precisely sure what the gap is. Obviously, there is a kind of like a road and a street in between, which is used for, well, it's a vehicular road. So I would say that you know, you're looking at probably, as best guess, I'd probably say 3 meters maybe.
Okay, and then second question, it wasn't clear that it was just me maybe interpreting it. How many windows will be facing that side NB's garden, if you can tell us, please?
Yep, so that is the side elevation, as you can see, along Angel Street. So there'll be the windows that will obviously be facing that unit.
Councillor Bambridge.
Yeah, we've had a lot of flats recently with 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. I'm just concerned that we seem to be forever increasing the number of tiny little bedrooms in the town centre. I appreciate that that's probably supply and demand, but is there such a big demand for so many of them? And I think some in the future, there's more to come. I just wonder how we measure the needs and requirements to come up with figures that are viable in the future. I mean, we've fairly recently gave permission for blocks of flats sort of just down beside the brewery, and other ones the other side of the not far across, diagonally across from those. You know, how do we justify so many of these small flats and things? I don't quite see.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's down to the applicant in terms of the business case that they're proposing. They obviously know that there is a market and a demand for this sort of accommodation. Otherwise, they wouldn't be advancing the scheme that we've got before us. I'd probably say from experience in dealing with apartments, it is quite the units themselves are quite generous and spacious. You know, the 2-bedroom unit, just looking at this now, if you look at unit 20, I mean, that's just over 111 square meters, which I think is quite generous, really. And you've obviously got the.
I don't have an issue on the size or the quality of them. It's just the fact that there are so many going to go on the market. And I would have thought there's a limit somewhere on it. But
Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions. Any provision at all for low-cost houses?
No, there's no affordable contributions due to viability. The scheme wouldn't be viable if affordable housing contributions were sought.
And also, why no 106?
For the same reason, it's down to viability. The scheme wouldn't be viable if it had to provide 106 contributions.
And the viability study obviously has been done.
Yes.
And at the same token, can we evaluate or can we revisit the valuation, you know, in a year or 18 months' time when this actually development is built?
No, there wouldn't be any review mechanism in place, but
Why can't we have a review mechanism? Because we get to this stage every time where in fact viability actually has been determined. And then in fact, you know, as prices go up, you know, we get to a stage where once again, the developer's making a significant profit on those particular timescales.
I mean, we do have review mechanisms in place, but these are for a lot larger schemes. I mean, this is quite a small development of only 47 units, so it's fairly small in kind of like the grand scheme of things. But when you're looking at larger residential sites, which you know you're more up to like 100 units, then you perhaps would have review mechanisms in place so that if they are under providing with affordable housing contributions, you have triggers in place for them to revisit that and perhaps have another look at the expenditure and costings to see if they could actually increase the offering that they've previously stated. But with this scheme, we're obviously starting at zero because they can't afford anything, and it's a very small scheme in itself.
I doubt whether the developer would come back and say, I'm making too much money, I'm going to, you know, increase the viability.
Yeah, I mean,
but anyway, that's
Councillor Barter.
And I was struck that the first item we considered this evening had a mansard roof written out of it, but here we've got one that does have a mansard roof. Now, I think they're quite attractive, reminiscent of Houseman's Paris, but are we being quite consistent here? It's not an objection, it's a question.
Yeah, I take your point. I think this scheme is very different to the one that we considered before. First of all, it's obviously a corner location, so having that wraparound mansard roof would be more in keeping, and also the buildings to which this unit proposed will be attached to and adjoining are perhaps less. I probably would say less attractive or less features than the previous scheme that we saw along Gold Street. I think the unit that was attached to was quite had some very local architectural features within it.
Councillor Sharps.
Yeah, I'll pick up on what Councillor Bart has said there. It does go back to the old style, which I think we should definitely try and include wherever possible, even if somebody has mitigated it out of a previous plan. But what I wanted to say was that I was slightly disappointed. If we look at this particular proposed view, they're very modern doors for what sits in a Grade 2 conservation area. So for me, conserving and enhancing a historic environment is very important. Now, this is burnt down, so effectively it should be given slightly more duty of care, really, and that does apply through planning. Any building that has come a cropper through that, it's a national policy, does apply in a national policy that buildings that are lost to our heritage should perhaps be slightly better maintained through planning. That door, why is it there? And why have we not put a door that is more in keeping with this building and the area, Grade 2 listed conservation area?
Yeah, that's a good point. Obviously, the plans in terms of the doors and windows are only indicative. There are conditions requiring full details of all windows and doors, and what we would expect to see as part of those details coming forward is for them to be in keeping with the building that once once existed on the site, and also in keeping with the buildings that surround it as well.
Yeah, that is for me very important. I see the rest of the detail within it has been addressed, but definitely it could be a piece out of place.
I mean, what they have done as well is there are aspects of the existing building which have been retained and put in storage. So the very prominent bay window that you see above that door that has been retained, it's in storage, and it will be sensitively reinstalled with regards to the new development coming forward.
And I do appreciate that, but I think that we need to make, through conditions, through use, make change to that particular door, because I think it actually reduces the impact of that building, and it will be there for a long time. So I think that's important to note.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Can we take that forward, please, in the conditions?
Yeah, I mean, the conditions do say, notwithstanding any details submitted, we will require full details of all external doors, windows, etc., including section drawings and scale plans as well. So that is all included within the conditions, and it specifically says notwithstanding any detail shown on the plans.
Yeah, good. Councillor Randall.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you raised that, Councillor Sharp, because that is an absolute, it really stands out at you, that it really does. And it does, to me, it totally ruins the look of that building, those plain doors. Obviously, we've had a fire there 3 times now, and down that street doesn't look, it's very narrow. I don't know if a fire engine would get round down there at all, and I don't know where the water hydrants are. But obviously it's been a massive fire 3 times now. So I assume that all the safety has been put in place to mitigate the risk of fire again.
Mr. Loud.
Yes, so obviously the building, with regards to fire regulations and compliance with that's more down to the building regulations stage. But I would imagine that there'll be things such as sprinklers within the units, and other fire prevention mechanisms, including obviously the cladding that the building will be cladded within. We'll have to make sure that it complies with all of the building control requirements.
And does it have to have cladding?
Yes, in terms of the ground, in terms of the ground floor, because obviously what we're trying to do is replicate what was there previously. So we've got that kind of like stucco facade around it, and then obviously we've got cladding above.
Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you, Chair. I propose that we actually accept this application, particularly with regards to 47 flats and also some of the commercial preferences. It actually is in character with the original, and also wouldn't it be nice to be in a situation where you don't see the scaffolding? And I can remember, as long as it has been, the scaffolding on the outside of that building. Isn't it nice to have something that replaces that in such a good character?
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Connolly. Thank you very much. Does anyone wish to speak? Councillor Connolly.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I listened to everybody about concerns about it, but I've been driving at that area every day, and it's a gateway into Northampton, and I think it's about time that we got that up and running and got it all nice and tidy. So I fully support it as well. So
thank you very much. Anyone else? We have a proposal before us that's been seconded. All those in favour of the recommendation to approve, please show. Unanimous again. Thank you very much. Item 8, 2 Burley Road, Northampton.
Chair, I'm just conscious that I think that road falls under my remit in the new boundaries as well. So I don't know how
in the new
boundaries. So I didn't make a comment in
right
in reply to it, if that makes sense. So I don't know how you want me to.
Thank you, Chair. The new boundaries are not enforced until the election in May, so you're not currently the ward member. This sits in Northampton Castle at the moment. Those boundaries obviously come into effect post-election. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, councillors. The application in front of you is a retrospective application for the use of the site at 2 Burley Road as a car sales facility with Portakabin office, and it includes the creation of a new access off Burley Road, boundary fencing, external lighting, signage, CCTV, and a car balloting area. The site is located approximately 1.5 kilometres to the north of Northampton Town Centre, off Kingsthorpe Road. As you can see from the images on the screen, the site has residential properties on 3 sides along Knightley Road, Curry Road and Burley Road, although the flats on Burley Road are set back slightly from the road itself. To the north and east, the site has commercial businesses, including Garden Machines immediately abutting the site, a Fiat garage and dealership to the north, opposite the northern corner of the site, and a Seat car dealership a little bit further along Kingsthorpe Road. The proposed site plan is the next image you'll see. As you can see, I don't know if you can see the new proposed access is where I've got the cursor key here. And there are 9 visitor and staff parking spaces located in front of the proposed Portakabin up in this part of the site. The car valeting area would be in the western corner of the site down here. The next plan shows that the largest vehicle that will be expected to visit the site, which will be a 7.5 ton box van, can enter and leave in a forward gear. Highway officers have checked the plan and have confirmed that everything is okay in terms of the tracking, and are satisfied that the access is suitable. As set out in the committee report, the site has a varied planning history. Up until 2010, the site was largely occupied by a Suzuki car dealership, with a fairly significant building on the site, as you can see from the images on the screen. These images were taken in 2009. And at this time, the application site also included 3 houses which were located in the western corner of the site along Knightley Road. In 2011, planning permission was granted for a care home on the site, and this included the demolition of the building, the dealership building and the 3 houses. Whilst demolition of these buildings took place and the site cleared, the care home was never built and the site laid vacant for some time. In 2018, temporary planning permission was granted for the storage of cars, and in 2021, temporary planning permission was granted for the use of the site for the car sales facility, including the Portakabin offices that are there today. This also included a proposed access off Curry Road. However, that access was never created and the use has obviously continued beyond the temporary period. The application being presented here today was obviously submitted for a permanent use of the site in order to overcome that issue. There were concerns about the impact of this proposal on the amenity of neighbours, particularly in relation to light impact, and there have been some issues with the use of floodlights on after opening hours, particularly with lights being left on throughout the night and lights illuminating neighbouring properties. However, following discussions with the applicant, it was agreed only to use these external lighting during opening hours, and it's understood that this is actually taking place and we expect that that situation would continue. Nevertheless, a condition is proposed to restrict the use of the external lighting to the hours set out in the decision notice to ensure that that continues to be the case. The site is currently being accessed via Knightley Road, which, as you'll see from photographs in a moment, is a narrow residential street with parking on either side. At present, there is no formal parking laid out on site, which results in some visitors parking on Knightley Road, which causes a conflict with residents parking. The proposal will result, as I said earlier, with 9 parking spaces for staff and visitors. And a new access, as I said, will be created off Burley Road. Highway officers have reviewed the plans as amended and are satisfied that the access meets required standards and there is sufficient parking spaces for a proposal of this size. The access off Knightley Road and Curry Road will be permanently closed off and that will therefore remove site traffic and parking stress from Knightley Road. Overall, officers are therefore satisfied that concerns regarding the impact of the proposal on the amenity of neighbours have been resolved and would be further improved by the creation of the new access. Just to give you some context, these are some photographs of the site as it currently is. These first two photographs are taken look on Burley Road, the first one looking up towards Kingsthorpe Road, and the one on the right is looking back across the site towards Curry Road and Knightley Road. As you can see, there are Harris fencing currently around the site. This will be replaced by a permanent fencing, the details of which will be secured by condition to make sure that it is appropriate. The next photos show the Portakabin offices and the current access off Knightley Road. And the photo on the right shows the narrow residential street with parking either side. And these final photographs are simply just to show the junction with Kingsthorpe Road and Knightley Road and Garden Machines business, which is immediately next to the site, and also the Fiat garage and Seat garage further up the road. So in summary, officers consider that the concerns regarding the impacts on the residential amenity have been addressed and can be controlled by condition. The site has a historic use for car sales, and there are other similar uses nearby. A permanent permission would provide certainty to the applicant to allow for the investment to create this new access, which would remove site traffic away from the narrow residential street. Following preparation of the committee report, an additional condition is proposed to be added in order to prevent car auctions from taking place on the site, in order to further protect the amenity of neighbours from additional noise and traffic as a result. Overall, officers consider the proposal is acceptable, and the application is recommended for approval subject to conditions.
Councillor Barrett.
Yeah, just two things for me. I went last week to have a look, and I just knocked on a couple of doors. I'm glad with the condition with the lighting is in, because that did come up on a couple of doors. And then the one that I was thinking was, I don't want that to be like a yard sale kind of car auction. So as long as that's explicit in there, I think that land is such a big piece of land that it's already in use with that anyway. So it's they're doing that as it is. But I think from our point of view, if we have a restrictive condition to ensure that, I think that's going to benefit the residents and how they use the site. So I'll absolutely support it. I'm just glad those conditions are quite firm as well. Thank you.
Can we deal with that in conditions?
Yes, it's a suggested condition.
Yeah, okay, it's a suggested condition. Yeah. Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you, Chair. Pleased to see with regards to the auction scenario, because I've actually got a very similar sort of location in my ward, and you know, it's amazing how it starts off as a car sales, then gets to auctions. And a couple of things actually is that you've only got 9 parking spaces for staff and visitors. There's going to be at least 9 staff that are actually going to be there. So where are the visitors that come along and view these cars? Where are they going to park? Presumably they're going to park on the road. And also, I did notice that there's no facility on here for car repairs. So, you know, because obviously when the situation evolves, when somebody puts in a car, you know, you're going to repair it before you actually get sold. Or in fact, when people bring it back, where there's a fault to it, you know, where do you get them repaired?
In terms of staff, the application form, I believe, mentions 3 members of staff.
Yeah.
And highway officers have confirmed that the number of parking spaces meets the standards, and they are satisfied that that is a sufficient number for staff and visitors. In terms of repairs, we specifically have stated it is not for the repair, no repairs should take place on site. In that case, the owners will have to send the vehicles off to another garage where they can be repaired before being brought back to the site for sale.
Thank you.
Councillor Bambridge.
Yeah, following on from Councillor Pritchard's point about the number of parking spaces for staff and visitors, I've been in the 70s, I was in the retail motor trade, and then later on, I was designing truck workshop layouts. And one thing that we were very careful about doing was not putting the staff's cars right outside the office, because it annoys people that they can't park their car and they've got to park a mile away. Parking is going to be different in their area. What I would suggest is that those staff cars are parked at the far end away, because they're going to leave come in the morning and that car's going to be there all day. That leaves that space open. So anyone coming in, there's more chance of them having a parking space right in the door. So it's going to be more attractive to their customers. And you know, a few more spaces for customers to have that area. I think it would help traffic flow. It would help relieve some of the parking issues, because you drive past and there's nowhere to park. You're going to drive on or park it around the corner or on double yellow line. It's just a suggestion that might make things easier for them and more attractive to their customers.
Mr. Luntz?
Yeah, I was going to say, obviously that's an operational thing in terms of where they put the visitor parking or staff parking. Like I said, 9 spaces have been allocated. Clearly they can increase that if they need it. And obviously not all the parking spaces that are used for the display of cars may not be occupied by vehicles for sale. And when you visit the site, you're driving into the site and it's very clear where those parking spaces are. They're to the right or in front of the Portakabin offices. But as far as we're concerned, Highways have confirmed that 9 spaces is sufficient number, and that is, you know, their location is suitable.
Councillor Randall?
Yeah, thank you. So there won't be any reduction to loss of parking on the street on Knightley Way, will there? Because obviously that goes from the yellow lines right the way to the end of the street, to the other end of your yellow line. So as long as that doesn't impact on that street parking already.
This proposal shouldn't make the parking on Knightley Road worse. If anything, it will improve the situation, I believe, because at the moment the access off Knightley Road has taken out several parking spaces. And with that being closed, that will then revert back to curb, and the parking space will effectively be reinstated.
Thank you.
Councillor Bagot-Webb?
Thank you, Chair. 2 points, they're probably linked. One is security and one is the fence. There's obviously Harrison fencing at the moment. What do we have in mind that is going to look reasonable in that area, but also secure? And what security features are built in to protect the site?
In terms of what fencing is proposed, we don't know at this stage, and it will be down to the applicants to submit further details, which we will then assess as being what is appropriate. I'm not entirely sure what we would consider to be an appropriate fence for this sort of use at this stage. But those details will be submitted, and the likelihood is it will be a better solution than just temporary Harris fencing, obviously. In terms of other security, there is CCTV on the site, so that is obviously taking video of the site on a 24-hour basis, I presume. And like I say, there is external lighting and during opening hours. So in winter months, it'll obviously be secure from that point of view. But there is CCTV as part of the proposal.
Councillor Barrett?
Yeah, I can answer that one. So the machinery business on the corner has, you know, the green tip fencing going around it. So they hold machinery on there. So my view, it would be similar to 7-8 foot tip with the spike on top. That'd keep that. Yeah, there's no worries from that perspective, because it works well for the business on the corner. I think from my views there as well with the staff, I know there's concern there. I spoke to, there's only 3, usually only 2 on site, so I don't see any amenity issue. I think it's going to improve the area to a degree because it gives that off-road parking option. So I'm going to recommend we go to the vote. I'm going to propose we accept officers.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Pritchard, does anyone wish to speak? You do.
Just through you, Chair, thank you. Just to confirm that this is in addition to the conditions set out in the committee updates, condition 14.
Indeed it is. All those in favour of the proposal, please show. Those against? We're unanimous. Urgent business? There is not. And I close the meeting at 8:05. Thank you all very much for coming.